the co-host of First Things First, weekdays at 3 Eastern on Fox Sports 1. Also, All Things Wright with Nick Wright on YouTube as well. And Nick joins us on the program. Why did you think the Broncos were going to beat the Chiefs on Sunday?
Well, I don't think they're going to go undefeated, or I didn't think they were going to go undefeated. At this point, you got to open it up as a possibility. And all year long, I felt like they were going to go 5-1 in the division. And this game coming up against Buffalo is the only meaningful game left on the schedule. If they win this game against Buffalo, they're kind of playing for nothing the final 7 weeks. They'll be 4 games clear of Buffalo, 4 games clear of Baltimore. I guess you could say Pittsburgh could run them down, but I don't think, and I really respect what Pittsburgh's done, but given their schedule, they have 6 divisional games plus the Chiefs plus the Eagles left. They're not going to run the table. So the Chiefs would have be 4 games clear of the field. So I just thought it was a game that it was Sean Payton's Super Bowl. Denver's defense with Vance Joseph played the Chiefs well last year. A lot of factors. And here's the other thing, kind of weird spot. The only 1 o'clock Sunday kick for the Chiefs all year. Yeah. So it's kind of like a body clock weird, like West Coast team going east type of thing. They're not used to playing early, and all of that played out, but they're one of the greatest teams ever put together, so they won anyway.
How big a deal is this going undefeated for the Chiefs?
Well, I think it would be a bigger deal if they weren't chasing what I think is maybe more impressive history. Now, obviously, if you could three-peat while going undefeated, that's unfathomable. But let me ask you, Dan, if the Chiefs were to three-peat at 15-2, are they a more legendary team than the 72 Dolphins? Yeah. I think so.
Yes.
So I think it's because you're going for, it would be almost as if when LeBron was chasing down, got LeBron into this 2 minutes in.
Early.
Well done. If the same night like LeBron could have broken Kareem's all-time scoring record, he was going for the single season scoring title. It's like both are cool, but one is held in a higher regard than the other. And so that's why last year I was big on the undefeated thing, and they obviously, lost their very first game, because to me that was a unique carrot as hey, no one's ever done this. A lot of teams, even though it'd been a long time, have gone back to back.
I'm wondering, and this made the rounds yesterday, are the Chiefs maybe bored a little bit? And maybe bored on offense a little bit, that they like degree of difficulty, and that maybe we're seeing a little malaise there?
So I don't think they're bored. I think they're practicing. I think that listen, it is not coincidence that Mahomes has the worst numbers of his career, except for in the fourth quarter when he's the best quarterback in the league. It's not coincidence that the Chiefs' offense is pretty mediocre, except for third downs, where they have the best third down conversion rate of any team in 15 years. It's not coincidence that they trail in every game this year but one and then come back. What I think is, for a team that knows it's going to be a 20-game season and only 2 or 3 games actually matter, they are using the beginning of games to figure out what most teams try to figure out in practice. I think most teams in practice, they're like, all right, what are the 15 plays that definitely work? Let's use them on Sunday. I think the Chiefs in games are like, okay, what are the plays that we don't know if they work that might get added to the play, you know what I mean? What I like to call the good plays. It's crazy how just when they got to have it, that's when they run the good plays. And it's also why I would prefer they not have to pull these games out on final drives, because I think one of their playoff edges is there's going to be less tape of them running their good plays than other teams, but the more times you have to activate that gear, the more that gets out there. But I really feel like, let me give a kind of 30,000 feet. 2 years ago, the Chiefs were fairly doubted. And by fairly, I don't mean moderately. I mean they hadn't won the Super Bowl in a couple years. Mahomes is coming off his worst playoff performance ever. They traded away Tyreek Hill. That doubt was legitimate. They win the Super Bowl. Last year, they were somewhat fairly doubted because they truly played bad football for a 6-week stretch and lost games. This year, it is purely a media creation. They are the two-time defending champions with the best coach, the best D coordinator, the best special teams, the best quarterback in football, the best defense in football, the best kicker in football. They haven't lost. They've played one of the toughest schedules. But it's boring to say, well, obviously they're better than everyone else. So now it's a pure what's wrong with the Chiefs. Meanwhile, every time the Ravens do anything, it's, oh my God, is this the greatest offense we've ever seen, even though they lose a third of their games?
Well, that's not anti-Chiefs as much as we want a new story.
Well, it's also, if I may, it's also, and I've said this before, I will say it again. Lamar Jackson was so unfairly maligned at the beginning of his career that now folks have an allergy to treating him the way we treat Aaron Judge, which, same guy. Unbelievable, remarkable, historic regular season player who, it's not that he's not the same in the playoffs. Every single year, he is his absolute worst in the playoffs. Every athlete of my lifetime that has fit that profile is treated with heavy, heavy skepticism, except for Lamar. And I think it's because, you know what? I blame Bill Polian. I think because Bill Polian said he was supposed to be a wide receiver, everyone since then is still reacting to that.
He's Nick Wright, host of First Things First on Fox Sports 1. Also, What's Right with Nick Wright on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. We've talked about this before, where sometimes we'll look at what you do or don't do in the postseason, and that affects how people view you in the regular season when it comes to awards. Like Lamar Jackson, I don't know if there is a hangover for what happened last year in the postseason or the previous year. You're going to give him an MVP again this year. And is that fair? Joker. Giannis, you win a title and all of a sudden then, there's hands off. Joel Embiid gave him an MVP and then he doesn't act like an MVP in the postseason. Do you think that what Lamar doesn't do in the postseason is going to hurt him for the MVP this year?
Not enough for him not to win it because right, like this, the way I look at it is Brew on the show says this and he's right. You almost look at the MVP race as a 100-meter dash or whatever, or call it a 1,600-meter, whatever. But it's staggered starts. And it's staggered starts based on how many times you've won, how you've responded in the postseason, if you're a legend, how long it's been since you've won, etc. So I think Lamar started in last place before this year. He had everything working against him narrative-wise. He had just won it. He's never played well in the postseason. The two biggest factors. But he's not only made up the stagger, he's now running away from the field. And so I do think it impacts it, but I don't think it disqualifies him. What is interesting as a thought exercise is what if it plays out exactly the same? What if a year from now, Lamar is now a 3-time MVP back-to-back and just had a record-breaking regular season and then fell on his face in the playoffs. And next year at week 10, he's got 25 touchdowns, 1 interception. The Ravens have an even better record. At some point, I do think either folks are going to say, we don't care that the award is losing some luster, or they're just going to say, sorry, I know we say it's a regular season award, but there's an element of, our own biases, I guess, that are going to come into play. But I feel stronger about the NBA MVP and its historical resonance than the NFL MVP. The NBA MVP doesn't have a lot of Sean Alexander seasons, Rich Gannon seasons, just doesn't.
Yeah.
It's really the who's who of the 25 greatest players ever with a couple, Steve Nash winning a second was weird, that type of stuff. NFL MVP is not that, so I'm not as emotionally attached to it as I have been with other stuff.
Bigger mess, the Jets or the Cowboys?
Well, what a question. The Cowboys are more hopeless, amazingly, because there's no way to get out of this. The Jets were the most predictable mess in the world, and as embarrassed as Aaron Rodgers should be, I got a whole lot of folks that are on that elite media group chat that you're on that I'm not should be real embarrassed with some of those Jets takes before the year. But the Jets, here's the thing. We're not going to get political on this show, but I will talk about one of the after effects of last Tuesday in this country. Woody Johnson might be going abroad again, and the Jets might have a real chance of a true reset. Woody out because he's going to be ambassador to somewhere. I'm sure he'll do a wonderful job. Chris Johnson taking over. Tell Aaron Rodgers to go home. You build around Quinnen Williams, who's awesome. Sauce, who's having a really rough year and I think could go in the wrong direction, but is a great player. Your young players, and blow everyone out. New GM, obviously new coaching staff, use your top 5 pick you're going to have on a quarterback and go. Fresh start. The Cowboys had such an opportunity to do something cutting edge if they would have just held the line on Dak. You know what? Screw it. We are going to have this be lame duck years for everyone. Yeah. And had they done that, I don't think their fans would be bummed about this year. They'd be like, hey, lose as many games as you can, draft a quarterback, reset around your young quarterback, CeeDee Lamb, Micah. Instead, they signed Dak at the last minute, and now they're locked into this mediocre-ish roster, win healthy. They're going to have a new head coach, and Jerry has lost the plot. I mean, again, not to get political, but the Cowboys don't have a Kamala Harris to replace him with. And I know that didn't end up working out, but like Jerry is fighting old wars and losing them. And so so if I'm a Cowboys fan, this is probably the most down I've been. I thought they'd be good this year. I didn't think they'd be great, but I'm like, they're the Cowboys with Dak. They win 10, 11, 12 games every year. I know Dak's hurt, but they weren't going to win that even if Dak had stayed healthy.
More embarrassing, my take on the Jets to start the year or your take a few years ago on Joker winning MVPs?
Okay, so first of all, my Joker take was not wrong. Second of all, I didn't know
you called
were
him
one of
the
Jets
worst.
People.
You called him one of the worst MVPs ever, didn't you?
Well, I said after his first MVP, he was the worst MVP since Dave Cowens. But again, people have a very hard time understanding scale. If we get the 30 richest people in the room and I say you're the poorest, you're still rich. You're just the poorest of those guys. Now, was he at that time, the third worst MVP since Dave Cowan? Should I add him out to Derrick Rose? Fine, whatever. My other Joker MVP take was that I just want him to go on a legendary playoff run before he wins all the MVPs. He did, and now he can win all the MVPs. I am consistent on this. The Jets thing, I didn't realize you were one of the people who believed in the Jets. It's so baffling to me. Like, at its core, you have a 40-year-old, somewhat interested in football, potential drug abuser at quarterback who just came off a torn Achilles with the worst coaching staff in football. In what world is like, well, that's 12 wins? I never
won
got
7
it.
games with Zach
Everyone
Wilson.
Everybody
They have a good
that.
defense. They had skill position, and I thought Rodgers could be a difference of 2 wins, maybe 3 wins. I thought that he could be.
Everybody says they have. So here's the thing. This is what frustrates me. The Jets had league average skill position guys. League average. People are like, oh, Garrett Wilson's amazing. Line up the receivers in this league 1 through 20 and tell me where Garrett Wilson comes in. The answer is going to be somewhere between 10 and 15, which means about a half the league as a receiver as good as Garrett Wilson. People love Breece Hall. No one's ever loved a running back who's never had 1,000 yards in a season more than they love Breece Hall. And then there's Rodgers, who was not good his last year in Green Bay. So I just think I think people wanted the Jets to be good, but the other piece of it that I didn't understand why people wouldn't do is part of when we're talking about the Chiefs, even when Mahomes is playing poorly, we're like, man, he is such a leader. And in this league, that matters so much. Nobody did seem to care about the fact Aaron Rodgers, by any objective measure, is one of the worst leaders in sports, and that was going to have knock-on effects. So I didn't mean to take a shot at you. It was really a shot at Greenberg, I'll be honest with you.
I'm not wearing a jersey or anything.
Well, I don't know. I see green under that sweatshirt you're wearing. I'm not sure what's there. I'm sure you look great. Oh, wow. What a t-shirt. Is that Junior? Wow.
Yeah. All of a sudden things just changed a little bit there, didn't they?
Yeah. Good job. I like
10% off. Jr. Yeah, 10% off there. Yeah. You're right about Rodgers. Rodgers forgot what it's like to be a leader when you don't play well, where you can follow me the way I play. Now you have to actually have a voice. Now you actually have to lead by telling people and regrouping people. Like Micah Parsons in Dallas. Be a leader.
Oof.
Be a leader.
Yeah.
Don't be a podcaster. Don't be Draymond Green. Be a leader. Stand up, you know?
So can we talk Micah for a minute? I don't know how much time we have.
Go ahead.
I just turned 40, and I found that while my actual politics didn't get more conservative, my sports politics did. I'm like a big run the ball guy. I told you this now, punt on 4th down. I also am way more annoyed by these young kids that haven't learned to win that are doing podcasts. And I really hate the person I'm becoming, but I'm kind of embracing it. I obviously do not believe shut up and dribble. I think it's an abhorrent stance. I actually have maybe the hottest Micah Parsons podcast take imaginable. I'm fine with you doing the podcast. It just can't be about football. It has to be about things other than football. It's actually the opposite of shut up and dribble. You talk about anything you want except football. Stop ranking quarterbacks and leaving Dak out, or then putting Dak in at the bottom. Stop talking about schemes and other players. Like, do the podcast. It's fine. But it can't be in the NFL. It can't be about football. And I also think him doing the Draymond thing of, oh, you guys misinterpreted me. Get the real story on the edge. With like, man, I'm sure Bleacher Report pays well, and God bless him. But to quote, second time, LeBron James, let's keep the main thing the main thing. Let's focus on the main thing that allows for these other things to exist.
Great to talk to you as always.
You too. I have one last question. How do you stay tan? Because my wife this morning turned to me and said, you look like a vampire, and it's the winter, and I don't know what I'm going to do. And you always look just wonderful.
I would leave the house occasionally if I were you. Like, just get outside. Walk around New York. So many
sports to watch.
I was just walk around New York.
Okay.
The sun's been out for the last month. There hadn't been any rain there, Nick.
Yeah, I know.
Just get out.
Nah, good. Okay.
Do some exercising.
I do exercise every day, but I do it inside my house.
Yeah,
while
get
watching
out.
Football replays.
Yeah, do some yoga outside or something.
Flip side is if I spent so much time outside instead of watching football replays, I might have been as wrong about the Jets as you dopes. See you, Dan.
Wow. Where did that come from?
A little harsh.
Yeah. Hey, hung up.
Yeah.
Soft.
Say it to my face.
What is it? Take shots at Dan Day?
Checking the calendar.
Nick Wright, host of First Things First on Fox Sports 1. What's Right with Nick Wright on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast.